So, a couple months ago, one of my clients graduated from my Hormone First Method program, and I wanted to take a minute to brag on her a little bit because the work she did was absolutely amazing, and I'm so proud of her. So, this is Janelle's journey. Janelle and I originally met because she was referred to me from another provider. The provider was in charge of her semaglutide, and she had just recently gotten on semaglutide, and she was interested in building habits with the semaglutide so that when she was eventually off of it, these habits would stick, all of the results would stick. She got on the semaglutide, which is a GLP-1, because she wanted to lose that last about 5-ish pounds. She had tried everything, a lot of diets, a lot of workouts, a lot of different things, supplements, etc., and nothing seemed to budge. And so she thought to herself, maybe it's something hormonal. Went to this practitioner. This practitioner gave her the semaglutide, referred us, and we started working together. Now, before I dive into where Janelle was when we first started working together, I want to kind of mention that I am not against GLP-1s. I am, however, a little bit skeptical of them when they are prescribed for that last 5 pounds. Um, Most of the time, that is the tricky weight to lose. However, like I said, I'm not against GLP-1s, but I do think that usually that last 5 pounds, even if it is feeling a little bit sticky, it's just about reviewing what you're doing and then kind of readjusting it from there. But saying that, I do trust this practitioner and I do appreciate that Janelle was like, yes, I absolutely need to build these strong habits while I'm on GLP-1s because otherwise, what's the point? It's all going to come back if I'm not understanding what's going on in my body. So with the GLP-1s, her approach to it was very, very conservative. They were not increasing every single week. They would increase and then manage like her symptoms and look at what's going on, how she's feeling. And then on top of that, her and I were also meeting and we could really deep dive on like, is this normal? Is this something else? Is this because of the GLP-1s? Like what's going on here? And that teamwork between her practitioner, me, and Janelle, it really just was like a beautiful connection of the three of us working together for the same purpose of Janelle feeling really healthy, feeling comfortable in her skin. During our very first session, what I like to do is I actually sit down with my clients and we deep dive into everything. Before this session, they get a huge questionnaire type thing where they are telling me everything for their health history, what their current symptoms are, what they've been through in the past, what diets they've done, what they're currently doing for their food, what workouts they've done, what they're currently doing for their workouts, as well as a bunch of other biofeedback like their energy, their cravings, how they're sleeping, their stress levels, their periods, their menstrual cycle, etc. So we really dive in that first session right away. And here were a couple things that I started noticing that even with or without the semaglutide were a problem for Janelle. And this problem was something that we would have to work on together if she wanted to see weight loss or feel good in her skin. So first things first, she had a history of yo-yo dieting. She had tried a bunch of the trendy and fatty diets, and just like the tale as old as time, they would work until they wouldn't. So she would lose weight, and then she would stop that diet, gain it back, and then try to do that diet again. Maybe lose a little bit of weight, but it was harder this time than it was the first time. And the cycle keeps repeating as she would try a new diet, and the same thing would happen over and over again. In the meantime, I also had her tracking her calories and macros just to see where we were. She had no goals of you need to hit this number or these macros. It was just kind of like, let's track. I'm zeroing out your logs. Let's see what you are actually going to hit. And she was eating pretty low calorie and pretty much no protein whatsoever. And when I calculated on our first call of how much she should be eating, she was about 800 calories short, and her total protein was about 50 grams per day of protein when she should have been up closer to like 120 grams a day of protein. Obviously, there is a very step-by-step way of how we will refeed, and I'll go into that in a minute. But right away, I was like, okay, we have some issues because she has been chronically under eating, and that's something that we're going to have to really focus on. And is this part of what has contributed into her not feeling amazing? The next thing I noticed were her workouts. She was working out, but she didn't really have like a plan or a reason of why she was doing what she was doing. She was also a little bit intimidated to lift weights, which as women, we should be starting to lift weights if you aren't already, just to help preserve our muscles and our bone density as we are getting older. But she really wanted to start lifting weights. She wanted to understand her form. She wanted to do that. She just was a little bit skittish and nervous about how do I go about starting this process, which is totally fine because, of course, I have a program that helps with that. And on top of that, we started looking at a lot of her biofeedback. And one of the biggest red flags for me was that she had massive period symptoms every single month. For me, period symptoms are a sign of what is going on under the skin and what needs to be addressed before you can safely lose weight or safely build muscle and feel really, really good in your skin. If you have underlying hormonal symptoms, especially in the form of period symptoms, then it is going to be very, very difficult to lose weight and feel good in your skin. So specifically for Janelle, she would be kind of stuck to her house. She would not want to leave her house for a couple of days of her period because her period was so heavy. She had large clots, she had cramps, she had trouble sleeping leading into her period. She had bloating, she had the hot flashes, she had the works, literally just like every period symptom you could think of. Janelle was embodying that. And I knew right away that a lot of the other things that we were talking about with her yo-yo dieting and with potentially the semaglutide, all of this could really kind of impact her period as well. So we got into a phase of really tracking her cycle as well as the symptoms that were happening during her cycle. So after our intake and uncovering all of these things, I started making a plan for the early phases of our coaching relationship together. And this included obviously making building habits for the semaglutide and making sure that we're optimizing that, looking at her energy levels, making sure that if she was increasing and felt nauseous, like what do we do? So we were helping with the semaglutide while building healthy habits for when she would be off of the semaglutide. Focused on four different areas. The first thing was we knew that we needed to eat more. And this was a little bit scary, especially as women, when we are told you need to eat more. And we've also been told you have to eat about 1,200 calories every single day in order to lose weight. So for her, this was a little bit scary, but we did go over a lot of the research and studies of reverse dieting and how this is actually going to help your metabolism. How if you are eating super, super low, other systems are making up for it. And then how do you drop lower if you are trying to lose weight? So we really dove into the nutrition piece and started doing a reverse diet, started increasing her calories, started increasing her protein very slowly. And it was a step-by-step guide. It wasn't just like all of a sudden we were eating 800 calories more. We started very, very small, adding about 150 to 200 calories. And then from there, her body adjusted and she realized, oh, this is actually doable. And we kept adding over time. With the eating as well, she's a very busy professional and she works from home. And so sometimes she would kind of forget to eat, where she would get up, grab her coffee, start work, and then look at the clock and be like, oh, I have not had any food and I am starving. Or a meeting during lunch would happen and she would just kind of have to push back lunch, or she would have more of a girl dinner because her husband was traveling and she didn't want to cook for two people or just herself. And so we really focused on the meal timing and what made the most sense based on her schedule and how we still wanted to get to this area of eating more food, but we don't have enough time, or we have to build habits and build areas where we need to make sure we are eating in those times. Really focused on the meal timing, which did help increase the calories as well. The next thing we focused on was strength training. So she was, like I said, a little bit nervous to lift heavy. It wasn't because she thought she was going to get bulky or gain weight or anything like that. It was just she had never really done it before. And so I set her up with Action Athletes, which is my strength training program approved for women with hormonal symptoms. And slowly she was using these programs, challenging her body, asking me questions about how things should feel, or how do you know it's time to lift more, or what about sets and reps, and how do I know which is the right thing for me? And so we started really like focusing on these programs that I had built through Action Athletes. And for her, she was taking it and applying them to herself, to the equipment that she already had and her goals, and asking me questions and really becoming a student of lifting. And she started really enjoying lifting. Along with that, number three, we started focusing on movement in general. So it is very easy to get stuck at your desk all day and not move whatsoever. And I knew that that sedentary lifestyle was not going to help with weight loss in the long run. And so we really focused on how she can either get on the treadmill at some point during the day, how she could get her dog out for a walk. Where can we get just a little bit more movement so that at the end of the day, it is actually helping and not hurting you? And then number four, we worked on stress management. Though she is not a super stressful person, there are life stresses in general. She does travel. She has a lot of family coming in and out of town. She was having like alcoholic beverages, which can cause stress on your body. And so we really focused on stress management, wind down routines, starting your workday routines, stretching routines, mobility routines, etc., to manage her stress. And slowly over time, she started having better periods. And within this time, in our early steps, she decided to come off semaglutide because she realized that it wasn't actually helping her. She wasn't losing those last 5 pounds. She was still like maintaining everything, which for me on my side, I was like, that's a good thing to be at maintenance. For her practitioner, of course, she wanted to see her lose just a little bit of weight, especially with the semaglutide and being on it. But at the end of the day, as they kept trying to increase her dose, she did get kind of sick, didn't feel really great, and she decided for herself to come off of the semaglutide. I told her either way, I would work with whatever her decision was, and that was her decision. And she talked to her practitioner, they agreed, she came off of it, and we just fully went into the reverse diet, getting to maintenance, staying at maintenance, lifting heavier, feeling good in her skin, making sure that any of these symptoms that she was experiencing, we were talking through them, coming up with a plan of how to reverse them. And after being at maintenance calorie for quite a while, for several months, we checked in with all of her hormonal symptoms and biofeedback, and her periods were actually doing better. They were lighter. She was not staying home. She wasn't getting like the massive clots. She wasn't getting the cramping, the fatigue, all of that stuff. So all of that stuff started looking much better. And she decided maybe it is time to actually go into a deficit. My theory around deficits is that you should not be in a deficit for more than 3 to 4 months. The reason being is your body does adjust to that deficit. Your body will always adapt to whatever you do because your body's only goal is to keep you alive. And I didn't want to put her back into a spot where she was under eating, causing symptoms, etc. And so we started the deficit. And I also make sure that my clients eat the most calories that they can during the deficit while losing weight. So she was still eating as close to maintenance. I think she was like about 200 calories under maintenance and feeling good, lifting, working out. Her biofeedback looked really great. Everything was just moving along. Her sleep was good. Her stress management was good. Her workouts were good. She felt good. Her periods were good. And over the course of about 3 to 4 months, she lost about 10 pounds, which is more than she had lost on semaglutide or previously with any other diet. And she also lost about 14 inches because we took circumference measurements every single week. Most of our inches were around the midsection, which is common for women, and it was really exciting to see those changes week over week. We ended up pulling out of the deficit just a little bit early because she had gone on vacation and got sick and eventually had to go on some antibiotics, which I was like, let's give your body time to recover and heal instead of being in a deficit and having it kind of fighting and more stressed out. So she was on antibiotics, and unfortunately, this is one of those sicknesses that like she had one sickness, went on antibiotics, and then she got hit with another completely different sickness, like right after that, went on more antibiotics, and another one, and another. And it was so many, I want to say it was about 6 weeks of just like being sick with antibiotics. Her period symptoms were starting to come back. She didn't feel great. With antibiotics, it is very common to have your gut lining kind of get torn up a little bit. So there was a little bit of that kind of stuff. And I was like, we cannot be in the deficit. Let's reverse you out. But in the meantime, we were in this reverse diet and it was harder for her to eat more because her body just was like so feeling like blah from all of the sickness and all of the antibiotics. So it took us a long time for her to get out of that reverse diet into a maintenance phase. And meanwhile, while all of this was happening, she started rebound, like getting some of that rebound weight gain. So there was definitely inflammation in her body. She was not feeling her best. She was definitely bummed out to see some of that weight gain return. It did not ever get back to where she was when we first started meeting. However, obviously working so hard in a deficit, it is heartbreaking to see all of your hard work kind of unraveling when you don't know why or what to do about it, or because you've been sick and you're just trying to take care of your body. So typically, when I have a client go through a deficit and then a reverse diet back to their maintenance, it is also a slow process, but I make sure to get them back to maintenance as soon as possible without having the rebound weight gain, which Janelle did have. We started talking about that as she was like struggling to get back to that maintenance. We started talking about what can we do to help with the weight loss in the future? I also think it's really important after any type of weight loss phase to really reflect on how you felt, what you would do differently, etc. A lot of our reflections were around the timing of the deficit. So making sure that we aren't ever going into a deficit during the summer months when maybe she's more socially active or traveling and it's really hard to be in a deficit, or during the holidays, which is also very hard to be in a deficit because you are literally presented with so many holidays with food, and it's a very food-centric time. So we did talk about that. We talked about what's next. Of course, she was frustrated with a lot of this rebound weight gain, but she was still struggling to get to that maintenance calorie. And so we started talking actually about a different approach. She was excited to lose weight again, potentially go into a deficit again. And I was a little bit hesitant because it took us so long to get back to maintenance and she was still working on it. But she had a large event coming up, which she did want to lose weight for. And I told her that I don't think that it is in our cards to be losing weight. And so we were kind of at this like, we weren't like butting heads. We were just trying to like give and pull of how can she feel the best at this large event and without impacting her hormones anymore. What we compromised on was that we would go into not a deficit, but more of a body recomposition look. And so what we did was we continued with the reverse diet. I do all of my clients' macros. So I did her macros and we started really focusing on composition as well as changing up how her workouts looked. So instead of working in hypertrophy, we went into more of a strength phase, which her body seemed to respond really, really well to, especially with the recomposition numbers. With that, she finally started losing weight again, and she was eating more than she even was before the deficit. And it just, everything started looking good. Her periods started getting back to normal. Her sleep was good. Her stress levels were fine. Like everything looked really, really good. And she was still losing weight and eating more and lifting heavier. And that was the end of our relationship. We left it in a really, really good spot. She had been through the Hormone First Method, making sure that her period looked really good, her stress was managed, her meal timing was good, everything felt good, her fatigue went away. We went through that phase, and then we were able to really focus on her body composition with losing weight. And then as her goals started to change, she still wanted to lose weight while building muscle, and that is where I left her. As far as I know, she is crushing it still. She is still part of Action Athletes, so I can see when she is working out or when she's not. But I know she's lifting heavy. I know that she's really been traveling and enjoying this summer. Like we talked about when we reflected on how we would approach a deficit again. And I know she has all of the tools in her belt now of if she starts having period symptoms, what that means, and not falling for the yo-yo diets or the trendy supplements or anything like that. And so it was really cool to see her go from being on semaglutide to wanting to build healthy habits with it, which I think is a very smart thing to do, to eating more than ever and really like learning how it feels to feel good in your skin, to having a successful deficit, to yes, there's always going to be bumps in the road, like getting sick. Nobody can help that, but getting sick and then realizing from there how she still wanted to change her composition and there were still other options and other ways for her to do so. So I'm so proud of her. I am cheering her on always. And it was really, really cool for 2 years to watch this whole process unfold. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you have been on a weight loss journey and you just listened to this video, what is one thing that you're like, oh, I might be doing that and I need to revise it, or one thing that you want to know a little bit more about for your own journey? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you on the next Hormone Happy Hour. Cheers.